First of all, a will is important for everyone. It's not for what a lot of people think, rich, old people. You should consider making a will whenever a major event happens in your life. So whether that's the birth of a child, the purchase of a house, moving in with a partner, getting married, they're all triggering events when a will is an important thing to consider and think about.
So at what point do you need to legally write a will? I know these days people are getting married later, people are buying a house later. It's different generations.
Yeah, that's very true. There is no set point when you should write one, or no set point when you shouldn't, really. The thing and certainly I try and encourage is to people to consider it and think about the what if in life. What if you were to pass away, would the people you care about be looked after? And that's the important thing about a will. It's giving you the choice to decide what happens, and also ensuring the people you leave behind are protected, irrespective of when that is.
So what do the circumstances look like for, say, you've moved in with your boyfriend or your partner, but you're not legally, married, and something happens to one of you? What happens to, say, for the house, for example, if you've got a mortgage?
So if you're not married and you don't have a will, unless certain things are in place to mean that the property or a bank account automatically passes over, in general terms, that partner will receive nothing by law, and that obviously is a major problem, and can result in things going to other people who you wouldn't necessarily want it to go to.
And how can this be resolved?
By making a very simple will. A will then sets out where things go, who they go to, and clarify any issues, and most importantly allow you to, in that scenario, give your assets to your partner.
And why are you encouraging young people on the island to consider writing a will?
We're trying to encourage young people, and all people really, purely because not the majority, but a lot of people don't have one, and they aren't thinking about them because they're not a happy thing to think about. People don't want to die, but unfortunately we all will at some point. So it is something that we are trying to encourage people to, not necessarily they have to make one now, but just to think about them and encourage their family or their parents to think, well, are we protected by what you've got in place?
And what about people out there who, I don't know, still live at home? Like I know I'm still living at home with my parents, but I've got completely separate bank accounts to them. And say, for example, you get sick, you're diagnosed with whatever illness. What happens?
So if you're, as you described there, living at home with your parents, it may be that you don't want your estate to go to your parents. You might want it to go to a charity. You might want it to go to a friend. You might have a favourite pet that you want your brother or sister to look after, or you might have a child. And those things are all that can be put in a will. I say it's not necessarily for old people with a house who've got 2 kids and they leave everything to the 2 kids. It doesn't often work in those manners, and people's lives aren't standard. So you need to think about what fits you and adapt it accordingly.
And is wills, do you think, something everyone considers? Sorry, let me put that again. Do you think wills are something we tend to forget about or put off?
Yes. A lot of people say that they're putting their will off because they fear that if they make their will, they will then die. And that, believe it or not, is one of the bigger reasons why people don't make one. And that obviously isn't the case. I often say you don't take car insurance out because you think you're going to crash. You take it out just in case you do. And the same is with a will. You take it out just in case something's going to happen to you.
So can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing next month?
So next month we've got, in conjunction at Callin and Manx Blind Welfare, we set up a will writing month. So during the month of March, we are offering wills at a reduced rate, and from the fees that we charge, we're going to donate half of the fee to Manx Blind Welfare. Myself and the partners at Callin are very keen to assist the Manx community, and obviously Manx Blind Welfare are an excellent local charity, and we see it as a great way to encourage people to think about wills and hopefully make a will, and at the same time to generate some much needed funds for a very good charity.
So you mentioned that. Do you have to pay to write a will?
Yes, yeah. So in the scheme, the fees are £200 plus VAT for a single person's will, and £300 plus VAT for a couple's will.
What about people on who have less income than, what about people who say are in the lower part of the economy where they're not earning as much as, say, someone who's in a office job? So
the scheme itself is designed to generate some funds for the charity. So the will writing month is, as mentioned there, £200 and £300. But under the legal help scheme or the legal aid scheme in the Isle of Man, if you're in receipt of benefit, you can get a will on that scheme. So that would result in you effectively getting a will for free, which would be paid for by legal aid.
And what about if anyone's out there who's homeless and still has family? How does that work?
If you were homeless and still have family, I'm not so sure it would really work for a will. You generally need something to leave to someone. So the only benefit, I would suppose, in respect to making a will in that regard would be to appoint a guardian to look after your child or your children, and that's a very important thing to do, and often actually the most important thing for making, or the most important reason for making the will in the first place, is you can appoint someone to look after your children.
And how is this helping your charity?
Okay, well, we're a charity that is funded entirely by donations, fundraising and legacies. So obviously we want to promote the fact that people should have a will. We're not suggesting that you go and, if you make your will in the month of March, you need to leave something to Manx Blind Welfare, but we want to promote the fact that go and make a will because it is very important for individuals.
And obviously it's blind welfare. How does that work if you're visually impaired or have no sight in preparing a will?
So wills for people who have visual impairment there is a special manner in which they're produced and signed, in which the will is actually read out loud to the person signing, and then they sign after they've had it read out loud to them. So being visually impaired is in no way a preventative issue when it comes to making a will. And
is that the same? Is that the same for people who suffer from other disabilities?
Yes, yeah. Any disability, and actually even if the person can't sign themselves, someone can sign on behalf of them, or they can just make a mark. There is always a way to ensure that a will is executed by or on behalf of a person. Again, any type of disability, anything like that, does not prevent you from making a will.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I think we have pretty much covered everything, to be honest. I could say one last thing. Is there a deadline or cut-off age you would recommend people to do their will by?
No, there isn't an age limit or a lower limit or an upper limit, really. The important thing is when you think about one, make one. If that's young or old, but certainly, as mentioned previously, that if you have one of these events, such as the birth of a child, the purchase of a house, that's when you should consider it, because then you have either material asset to leave, or you have someone you need to look after if you're not here.
What about if you're a young girl and you get pregnant at 16 or even younger in some cases? How does that work? When you're still a minor.
So if you're a minor, you couldn't make a will if you're a minor anyway. But in terms of being a young mum or a young dad, and particularly if you're a single parent, then the reason for making a will is not necessarily for the finances. It's to ensure that your child is going to be looked after by whomever you want, and that is obviously incredibly important.
One last question before we finish, and apologies if I have asked this. I just want to make sure we cover everything. To people out there, why should they make a will or consider making one now?
So why people should make a will is it comes down to two real reasons. It's one, to give you the choice to know where things are going to go, because if you don't make a will, the law will say where it goes, and that might not be where you want it to go. Families are weird and wonderful things, and one size doesn't fit all, and the law is very rigid in respect of that. Whereas with a well-drafted will, you can leave things to whoever you like. The second thing, which is very important in life, is peace of mind. So you will then know that you have everything set in place to cover whoever you want it to cover, and look after whoever you want it to look after should something happen to you, irrespective of when that is.